An arrogant millionaire lost control of his own life after an accident left him paraplegic, until he meets a simple girl and offers her a roof so she can heal him. That night he feels his feet move and realizes he was involved in something much bigger than he had imagined. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harrison Reed's penthouse office in downtown San Francisco, illuminating the polished surfaces and sleek furniture that reflected his calculated approach to life. At 52, Harrison had built Reed Enterprises into one of the most formidable real estate development companies on the West Coast. His silver-streaked dark hair and tailored suits gave him the appearance of distinction, but it was the cold calculation in his steel blue eyes that truly defined him. "I don't care about their community center," Harrison said firmly into his phone, pacing before the panoramic view of the bay. "The Mission District property is being acquired according to our agreement. Their leases have expired, and the City Council has already approved our development plan." His executive assistant, Olivia Chen, entered silently with documents requiring his signature. She'd worked for him long enough to know when to be invisible. "Listen, Councilman," Harrison continued, "these people had years to organize and purchase the property themselves. They didn't. We did. Progress doesn't wait for sentimentality." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I understand. Please extend my regrets to the community leaders, but the decision is final. We break ground next month." Harrison ended the call and turned to Olivia. "What's next?" "The Morgan Tower contracts," she replied, placing the documents before him. "And your helicopter is ready for the Napa meeting." Harrison nodded curtly, scanning the papers before signing with practiced efficiency. His days were measured in acquisitions and profits, not in the human cost of his decisions. The pending Mission District development would transform a struggling neighborhood into luxury condominiums and high-end retail space. The fact that it would displace hundreds of families and destroy a vibrant cultural hub was merely a footnote in his business plan. "Have the PR team prepare a statement about community revitalization and economic opportunities," he instructed Olivia. "The usual talking points about jobs and property values." "Already done," Olivia replied. "Though you should know the protesters have increased outside the Mission property. The Garcia family's interview on local news is gaining traction." Harrison's expression hardened. The Garcia family, longtime residents and operators of a small bakery that had become the unofficial heart of the neighborhood, had become the face of resistance against Reed Enterprises. Their emotional appeals irritated him, particularly because they threatened to delay his timetable. "Have security increased and ensure the eviction notices are served as scheduled," he said dismissively. "I'll be back from Napa by evening." Minutes later, Harrison sat in his private helicopter as it lifted off from the rooftop helipad. Below him, San Francisco sprawled like a living chessboard where he moved pieces at will. He reviewed financial projections on his tablet, oblivious to the beauty of the landscape transitioning from urban density to the lush vineyards of Napa Valley. The meeting with foreign investors went exactly as planned. Harrison's reputation for delivering exceptional returns made him a coveted partner, and he secured an additional $50 million for the Mission District project. The celebratory dinner at an exclusive vineyard restaurant put him in a rare good mood as his helicopter took off for the return journey. Perhaps it was the 2 glasses of wine. Perhaps it was his thoughts already moving to the next conquest. Whatever the cause, Harrison didn't immediately register the sudden turbulence that gripped the helicopter. When the pilot's voice came through with barely controlled panic about mechanical failure, Harrison's world compressed into a singular moment of stark terror. The helicopter pitched violently. Emergency alarms blared. The pilot struggled with the controls as they lost altitude rapidly. Harrison's last conscious thought before impact was not of family or loved ones, he had none close enough to matter, but of the Mission District deal that might be delayed. Harrison awakened 3 days later in a private room at San Francisco General Hospital. The sterile white walls and the rhythmic beeping of monitors formed his new reality. Dr. Eliza Winters, a neurologist with credentials as impressive as her straightforward demeanor, delivered the news without embellishment. "The spinal cord injury is severe, Mr. Reed. While you've maintained upper body function, there is no movement or sensation below the waist. With your particular injury pattern, the likelihood of walking again is extremely low." Harrison stared at her, processing the information with the same analytical detachment he applied to business decisions. "Extremely low is not zero. What treatments are available?" "Physical therapy, certainly. There are experimental procedures, but none with guaranteed results. I should be clear. I want all of them, Harrison interrupted. Whatever exists, wherever it exists, arrange it. Dr. Winter's expression remained neutral. Mr. Reed, I understand your determination, but managing expectations is part of... Doctor, Harrison said coldly, I've built an empire by refusing to accept limitations. I'll handle my own expectations. Your job is to connect me with the best treatments money can buy. In the weeks that followed, Harrison approached his rehabilitation with the same ruthless efficiency that had characterized his business career. Olivia transformed part of his Pacific Heights mansion into a state-of-the-art therapy center. The most skilled physical therapists in the country were hired. A personal nurse attended to him around the clock. From his wheelchair, Harrison continued to run Reed Enterprises, refusing to show weakness to his board or competitors. Video conferences replaced in-person meetings. Decisions were still made, deals still closed. The Mission District project proceeded on schedule, with the final residents being removed from their homes under the watchful eyes of private security as construction equipment moved in. But behind closed doors, rage consumed him. Each night, after his staff departed, Harrison would attempt to force his legs to move through sheer will, cursing when they remained stubbornly lifeless. He hurled glasses against walls, fired therapists who suggested acceptance as part of healing, and withdrew from what few personal relationships he had maintained. 6 months after the accident, having exhausted American medical options, Harrison traveled to Switzerland, Germany, Japan, and Israel for experimental treatments. He subjected himself to stem cell therapies, electrical stimulation protocols, and robotic exoskeletons. Nothing produced lasting results. There's a clinic in Beijing using a new neural interface, Harrison told Dr. Winters during a follow-up consultation a year after the accident. His once immaculate appearance had given way to something harder and more desperate. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his voice carried the edge of a man running out of options. Mr. Reed, Dr. Winters said gently, you've spent millions pursuing every possible treatment. The medical consensus remains unchanged. It may be time to focus on quality of life rather than... I didn't build my company by accepting defeat, Harrison snapped. This isn't about defeat. It's about adaptation. Harrison dismissed her with a wave. Adaptation is for those who lack resources or will. I have both in abundance. That evening, alone in his mansion overlooking the bay, Harrison watched the sunset with a tumbler of scotch balanced on the arm of his wheelchair. The Mission District development was now complete. Reed Plaza, they called it. The luxury apartments had sold out before construction finished. The high-end boutiques were thriving. The profit margins had exceeded projections. None of it mattered. 2 years after the accident, Harrison had become a recluse. His once powerful frame had thinned. Board members whispered about his stability. Competitors circled, sensing weakness. The empire he had built with such single-minded determination was beginning to show cracks, not from external pressure, but from the absence of his driving presence. It was Olivia who brought him the rumor, though she did so with obvious reluctance. I wouldn't normally mention something so unconventional, she said, standing in his home office where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a fog-shrouded Golden Gate Bridge. But considering you've explored every traditional option, what is it? Harrison asked wearily, his attention barely engaged. There's talk in the Mission District, what used to be the Mission District, about a child. A girl who some believe has healing abilities. Harrison's laugh was bitter and sharp. Faith healers and snake oil. Is this what I've been reduced to? These aren't religious claims, Olivia persisted. There are people who insist they've witnessed actual medical recoveries. A woman's cancer disappeared. A child's blindness reversed. Coincidences and exaggerations, Harrison dismissed, though something in his expression shifted subtly. Probably, Olivia conceded, but these stories are coming from the Garcia family's neighborhood, the community that relocated after the development, the same community that... She hesitated. That I destroyed, Harrison finished flatly. You can say it, Olivia. We both know what happened. Silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken judgment. What's the child's name? Harrison finally asked. Sophia, Olivia replied. Sophia Reyes. Harrison spent a week dismissing the notion of seeking out this child. He was a man of logic, of concrete facts and measurable outcomes. His library contained books on economics and architecture, not folklore and miracles. And yet, the thought of Sophia Reyes wormed its way into his consciousness, a persistent whisper when traditional medicine offered only silence. "This is absurd," he muttered to himself as Olivia drove him through unfamiliar streets, far from the gleaming towers that bore his name. The neighborhood was nothing like the upscale districts he frequented, modest homes with small, carefully tended gardens, corner stores with hand-painted signs, and murals depicting cultural heritage that stretched across building sides. Many of the families from the Mission District relocated here, Olivia explained, navigating the narrow streets with care. It's not as central, but they've managed to rebuild some semblance of community. Harrison stared through the window, noticing children playing in a small park that looked recently constructed. "Who funded that?" he asked, gesturing toward the playground. "The Garcia Family Foundation," Olivia replied. "After the bakery was demolished, they used their settlement money to establish a non-profit focused on community preservation." Harrison fell silent, an unfamiliar discomfort settling in his chest. He had never concerned himself with what happened to the people displaced by his developments. They were abstractions, figures in impact assessments and relocation statistics, not individuals with lives that continued beyond his projects. The car stopped before a modest single-story house with a small porch adorned with potted plants. "This is where the Reyes family lives," Olivia said. "I'll wait in the car. You arranged this meeting." "You should come in," Harrison insisted, uncharacteristically uncertain. Olivia helped him into his wheelchair and accompanied him to the door. Before they could knock, it opened to reveal Elena Reyes, a woman in her early 40s with warm brown eyes and streaks of premature gray in her dark hair. "Mr. Reed," she acknowledged without warmth. "We've been expecting you." Harrison felt a flash of irritation at being known, at being expected. He was accustomed to controlling the terms of every interaction, but here, in this modest home, in this forgotten corner of the city, he was merely a supplicant. Elena led them through a living room filled with family photographs and hand-crocheted throws draped over well-worn furniture. The contrast to Harrison's minimalist, designer-decorated mansion could not have been more stark. "My daughter is in the garden," Elena explained, leading them toward the back of the house. "She spends most of her time there when she's not at school." The garden was a small backyard transformed into a verdant oasis. Raised beds overflowed with vegetables and herbs. Flowering plants attracted butterflies and hummingbirds. In the center, sitting cross-legged on a colorful rug, was a girl of about 10 with long dark hair pulled back in a simple braid. Sophia Reyes looked up as they approached, and Harrison was struck by the intensity of her gaze. Her eyes seemed to contain a wisdom entirely incongruous with her age. "Hello, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice clear and unafraid. "You came because you want to walk again." It wasn't a question. Harrison felt exposed, as if the child could see through the carefully constructed facade he presented to the world. "I came because I heard stories," he replied, attempting to regain his footing in the conversation. "Improbable stories about a child with healing powers." Sophia's expression remained unchanged. "You don't believe in miracles." "I believe in verifiable results." The girl nodded, as if his answer confirmed something she already knew. She rose gracefully and approached his wheelchair without hesitation. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward his legs. Harrison nodded stiffly, unsure what to expect. Sophia placed her small hands on his knees, and though he couldn't feel the pressure, something shifted in the atmosphere around them, a subtle charge, like the air before a storm. "Your body is broken," she said simply, "but that's not why you can't heal." Harrison frowned. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Sophia turned to her mother. "Could we have some privacy, Mama? I need to speak with Mr. Reed alone." Eleanor hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave her daughter with the man whose company had destroyed their former community. "I'll be right inside," she said finally, giving Harrison a warning look before ushering Olivia back into the house. When they were alone, Sophia returned to her rug and gestured for Harrison to join her. With considerable effort and wounded pride, he maneuvered himself from the wheelchair onto the ground. "Do you know why people in our community believe I can heal?" Sophia asked. "Because they're desperate," Harrison replied bluntly. "Desperate people cling to any hope, no matter how irrational." Sophia didn't appear offended. "Some do," she agreed. "But others believe because they've seen what happens when people help each other heal. When a community comes together, many things that seem impossible become possible." Harrison's patience thinned. "I didn't come for philosophy lessons from a child." "No," Sophia said, her voice suddenly older than her years. "You came because you've tried everything else. You've spent millions on doctors and treatments. You've traveled the world seeking cures, and still you cannot walk." The accuracy of her assessment unnerved him. "How do you know that?" "The same way I know about the helicopter crash. The same way I know you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night since it happened. The same way I know you dream of falling when you do sleep." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "I just know things sometimes." A chill ran through Harrison despite the warm sunshine. "What exactly are you claiming you can do for me?" "I can help your body remember how to heal itself," Sophia answered. "But there's a condition." "Of course there is," Harrison said with a harsh laugh. "What do you want? Money, a trust fund, a new house for your family?" Sophia shook her head, seemingly unimpressed by his wealth. "Do you remember what stood at the corner of 24th and Mission before your company tore it down?" The question caught Harrison off guard. He had never visited the neighborhood before development began. His knowledge came from property assessments and aerial photographs. "A residential building," he ventured. "The Esperanza Community Center," Sophia corrected him. "It was home to an after-school program, English classes for immigrants, a community kitchen, and a health clinic that served people without insurance. It was the heart of our neighborhood for 30 years. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "That was years ago. What does it have to do with my condition?" "Everything," Sophia said simply. "I'll help you walk again, Mr. Reed, but only if you rebuild Esperanza. Not just the building, the entire community that was scattered when you built Reed Plaza." Harrison stared at her incredulously. "That's impossible. The land is developed, the properties have been sold. The people have moved on." "You destroyed something that mattered," Sophia replied evenly. "If you want to be healed, you need to heal what you broke." "This is ridiculous," Harrison said, anger rising in his voice. "I came here as a courtesy, but I won't be manipulated by a child spouting nonsense about magical healing powers." Sophia remained calm in the face of his anger. "You're free to leave," she said. "But tonight, while you're lying awake in your empty mansion, you'll feel something you haven't felt in 2 years, a tingling in your toes. It will be faint, but unmistakable. That's how you'll know I'm telling the truth." Harrison maneuvered himself back into his wheelchair with difficulty, his face flushed with exertion and frustration. "I won't be back," he said coldly. "You will," Sophia replied with quiet certainty. "And when you do, I'll be here." The drive back to Pacific Heights passed in tense silence. Harrison stared out the window, replaying the conversation in his mind. The child's composure, her impossible knowledge of his private struggles, and her absurd demand, it all pointed to an elaborate con, perhaps orchestrated by community activists seeking retribution for the Mission District development. "What did she say to you?" Olivia finally asked as they approached his mansion. "Nothing worth repeating," Harrison replied dismissively. "It was a waste of time, as I expected." That night, Harrison went through his usual evening routine, reviewing reports, conducting a video call with investors in Singapore, and taking a selection of medications before being helped into bed by his night nurse. After the nurse departed, Harrison lay in the darkness, his mind churning with the day's strange encounter. "Rebuild Esperanza," he muttered sarcastically into the empty room. "Might as well ask me to reverse time." He drifted into an uneasy sleep, only to awaken at 3:17 a.m., the exact time of the helicopter crash 2 years earlier, a coincidence his subconscious never allowed him to forget. He stared at the ceiling, breathing through the familiar panic that accompanied these awakening. That's when he felt it, a sensation so unexpected that at first he wasn't sure what it was. A faint tingling in his right foot, as if blood were returning to a limb that had fallen asleep. A sensation where, for 2 years, there had been nothing but absence. Harrison reached for the light switch, his heart hammering against his ribs. He threw back the covers and stared at his motionless feet. The tingling continued, unmistakable now. With a shaking hand, he reached for his phone and called Olivia. When she answered, groggy with sleep, he spoke 4 words that defied his rational worldview. "Set up another meeting." 3 days later, Harrison returned to the Reyes home. This time he came alone, having insisted on driving himself in his specially equipped car. The tingling had continued, sometimes stronger, sometimes barely perceptible, but always present. A ghost of sensation, where doctors had assured him there would never be anything again. Sophia was waiting for him in the garden, as if she'd known exactly when he would arrive. Harrison wasted no time with pleasantries. It could be a coincidence, he said without preamble. Phantom sensations are common with spinal injuries. It doesn't prove anything. Sophia smiled faintly. But you came back anyway. Harrison's jaw tightened. I want to understand what you're proposing. This Esperanza project. What exactly would it entail? Sophia studied Harrison with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. First, you would need to locate every family that was displaced by Reed Plaza. There were 78 households in total, plus the 12 small businesses that operated in the area. Harrison fought to keep his expression neutral. He had never considered the exact number of lives disrupted by his development. And then what? You would need to create a new community center. Not just a building, but a true center with all the services Esperanza provided. And you would need to build affordable housing so that everyone who wishes to return can do so. On what land? Harrison challenged. The Mission District is completely developed now. Property values have tripled since Reed Plaza was built. Sophia nodded. That's the first problem you'll need to solve. Harrison leaned forward in his wheelchair. Let's be clear about what you're asking. You want me to find and relocate dozens of families, build a community center with comprehensive services, and provide affordable housing in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country? Yes, Sophia replied simply. That would cost hundreds of millions of dollars. It would mean unwinding complex real estate deals, facing potential lawsuits from investors, and effectively dismantling a significant portion of what I've built over the past decade. Yes, she repeated, unperturbed by the scale of what she was proposing. Harrison laughed bitterly. And in return, you promised to somehow heal my spinal cord injury, something the best neurosurgeons in the world have declared impossible? Sophia's expression remained serious. I don't promise to heal you, Mr. Reed. I promise to help you heal yourself. There's a difference. You're asking me to destroy my company on faith. I'm asking you to rebuild what you destroyed on faith, Sophia corrected him. And you won't have to take it entirely on faith. Each step you take toward fulfilling your promise will bring a corresponding improvement in your condition. Harrison narrowed his eyes. How convenient. A way to keep me committed indefinitely. Or a way for you to verify that our agreement works, Sophia countered. The choice of how to see it is yours. Harrison sat in silence, weighing the absurdity of what he was considering. His rational mind rebelled against the entire premise of this conversation. And yet, the tingling in his feet, a sensation that should be physiologically impossible given his injury, persisted. How would this healing process work? He asked finally. Sophia rose and approached him again. This time she placed her hands not on his legs, but on his temples. Her touch was light, but Harrison felt a curious warmth spreading from her fingertips. Your body knows how to heal, she said softly. It's forgotten because other things are blocking the path. Anger, bitterness, the walls you've built around yourself. As those begin to fall, the healing will follow. And if I agree to your terms? What happens then? I'll help you begin the process tonight, Sophia said. But the real healing will depend on your actions in the days and weeks to come. Harrison closed his eyes, aware that he stood at a crossroads that defied all logic. I need time to think, he said. Of course, Sophia agreed, removing her hands, but not too much time. Some journeys need to begin before we feel ready for them. That evening, Harrison sat in his home office, surrounded by financial reports and property portfolios. He had spent hours analyzing the potential cost of what Sophia proposed, not just in dollars, but in reputation, in business relationships, in the very foundation of the empire he had built. The conclusion was inescapable. What she asked would likely bankrupt him personally, even if Reed Enterprises survived in some diminished form. It was financial suicide, and yet the tingling in his feet had intensified following his visit with Sophia. Twice he had caught himself reflexively moving his toes, tiny, barely perceptible movements that his doctors had insisted would never be possible again. At midnight, Harrison made his decision. He called Olivia. I need you to compile a complete list of every family and business displaced by the Mission District development, he instructed without preamble. Names, current addresses if known, compensation amounts, everything. There was a pause on the line. Harrison, it's midnight. I'm aware of the time. May I ask why you need this information? The project was completed years ago. Harrison hesitated. I'm considering a community reinvestment initiative. Another pause, longer this time. I'll have it for you tomorrow, Olivia said finally, her tone carefully neutral. 3 days later, Harrison returned to the Reyes home with a thick folder containing the information Olivia had compiled. The data painted a stark picture. Of the 78 families displaced, 53 had moved to less expensive areas outside the city. 6 had left California entirely. 2 elderly residents had passed away shortly after relocation, a fact that hit Harrison with unexpected force. Sophia was waiting for him in the garden, as always. This time her mother hovered nearby, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "I've identified the families," Harrison said, handing Sophia the folder. "But I still don't see how this project is feasible." "The land—" "Start with what you can do today," Sophia interrupted gently. "The Garcia family is organizing a community meeting this weekend. People from the old neighborhood gather monthly to maintain connections. Attend it." Harrison stiffened. "You want me to face the people I displaced? They hate me." "Yes, they do," Sophia agreed. "That's why you need to start there. And if I do this, attend this meeting, you'll begin whatever treatment you're proposing?" Sophia shook her head. "The treatment has already begun, Mr. Reed. The moment you decided to try, something changed inside you. Didn't you notice the increased sensation in your legs yesterday?" Harrison stared at her, unnerved once again by her apparent knowledge of his private experiences. The previous evening, he had indeed noticed stronger sensations and had even managed to wiggle his toes slightly, something he had immediately documented and sent to Dr. Winters, who had responded with cautious skepticism. "Fine," he said curtly. "I'll attend the meeting where and when." The community center where the meeting was held bore no resemblance to the sophisticated spaces Harrison typically frequented. A repurposed church basement with fluorescent lighting and folding chairs, it nonetheless hummed with an energy he hadn't anticipated. Children playing in one corner, elderly residents chatting animatedly in Spanish and English, the aroma of home-cooked food filling the air. Harrison's entrance in his wheelchair created an immediate ripple effect. Conversations halted. Hostile stares followed him as he navigated toward the front where Maria Garcia, the matriarch of the family whose bakery had been the heart of the old neighborhood, stood addressing the gathering. She faltered mid-sentence at the sight of him, her expression hardening. "Mr. Reed, this is unexpected." "Ms. Garcia," Harrison acknowledged, uncomfortably aware of the tension filling the room. "I was hoping I might have a word with the group." Murmurs spread through the assembled residents. Someone in the back called out in Spanish, generating bitter laughter. Maria studied him for a long moment before nodding stiffly. "You have 5 minutes," she said, stepping aside. Harrison positioned his wheelchair to face the community. Dozens of faces stared back at him, some angry, some curious, all wary. He had prepared remarks carefully crafted with Olivia's help about community reinvestment and corporate responsibility. Looking at the people before him, those prepared words suddenly seemed hollow and inadequate. 2 years ago, he began instead, I was in a helicopter crash that severed my spinal cord. The doctors said I would never walk again. He paused, aware of how strange this opening must seem to them. Before that, I saw the world in terms of assets and opportunities. People were secondary considerations. The room remained silent, but he could feel the quality of attention shifting. "I'm here because I've begun to understand that I was wrong about what matters. The development that displaced your community, that I insisted on pushing through despite your protests, was profitable, but it came at a cost I never properly considered." An older man in the front row spoke up. "We told you the cost. We begged you to listen. You sent security guards to remove us from our homes." Harrison nodded, accepting the accusation. "Yes, I did that." "Why are you here now?" Maria asked, her voice carrying both authority and suspicion. "What do you want from us?" Harrison took a deep breath. "I want to rebuild Esperanza, not just the community center, but housing for everyone who wishes to return. I want to restore what I took from you." The silence that followed was profound, then broke into a cacophony of disbelieving voices. Some laughed bitterly, assuming this was some kind of cruel joke. Others hurled accusations, questioning his motives and sincerity. Maria raised her hand, and the room gradually quieted. "Explain yourself, Mr. Reed. Esperanza is gone. Reed Plaza stands where our homes were. This sounds like empty promises." "I don't have all the answers yet," Harrison admitted. "The land where your community stood is developed. Finding suitable property, navigating zoning issues, creating affordable housing in San Francisco, these are complex challenges, but I have resources, influence, and determination." "Why should we believe you?" someone called out. Why now after all this time? Harrison hesitated, knowing he couldn't share the full truth about Sophia. Let's just say I've had reason to reconsider my priorities. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours, far beyond the 5 minutes Maria had initially granted him. Harrison listened as residents shared stories of what they had lost. Not just homes and businesses, but a sense of belonging, of security, of community. Their anger was raw and justified, their skepticism entirely reasonable. By the end, no one had offered forgiveness or expressed enthusiasm for his proposal. But Maria had agreed to form a small committee to meet with him again, to hear specific plans once he had developed them. It was a beginning, tenuous and fragile, but more than he had dared to hope for. That night, for the first time since his accident, Harrison dreamed not of falling, but of walking through sun-dappled streets he didn't recognize. When he awoke, the sensation in his legs was stronger than ever. Experimentally, he tried to move his right foot. It shifted slightly beneath the covers. Dr. Winters could barely contain her astonishment during his next examination. There's definitely increased nerve response, she said, testing his reflexes. And the voluntary movement in your toes, while minimal, shouldn't be possible given the completeness of your injury. What explanation do you have? Harrison asked, watching her expression carefully. Dr. Winters frowned. Spinal injuries are complex. There are rare cases of partial recovery that we don't fully understand. But I want to be clear, this doesn't mean you'll walk again. These improvements might represent the full extent of recovery possible. Harrison nodded, keeping his thoughts to himself. He had felt something else that morning, a curious warmth spreading through his lower back when he thought about the community meeting, about the faces of the people he had wronged, about the possibility of making amends. Over the next week, Harrison threw himself into the Esperanza project with the same intensity he had once reserved for profit-generating ventures. He met with city officials to discuss zoning options, consulted with non-profit housing developers, and began identifying potential properties that might accommodate the community he sought to rebuild. The challenges were exactly as daunting as he had anticipated. San Francisco's real estate market was prohibitively expensive. Regulatory hurdles abounded. His board of directors was alarmed by his sudden shift in focus, with several members openly questioning his judgment and mental state. But each small step forward seemed to correspond with subtle improvements in his physical condition. The sensations in his legs grew stronger. The range of movement in his feet increased incrementally. During physical therapy sessions, he found himself able to exert pressure against resistance, a development that left his therapists searching for explanations. 2 weeks after the community meeting, Harrison received a call from Olivia while reviewing architectural proposals for the new Esperanza Center. "The board is calling an emergency session," she informed him, her voice tight with concern. "Eleanor Thompson is leading an effort to have you removed as CEO. They're citing erratic behavior and potentially self-destructive business decisions." Harrison had anticipated this. Eleanor Thompson, his chief financial officer, had been particularly vocal in her opposition to the Esperanza project, especially after learning that Harrison intended to liquidate a significant portion of his personal holdings to fund it. "When's the meeting?" "Tomorrow morning. Harrison, they have enough votes to force a confidence motion. You need to prepare." Harrison ended the call and sat in silence, weighing his options. He could fight the board, use his remaining influence to maintain control of Reed Enterprises, or he could step aside, focus entirely on rebuilding Esperanza without the constraints of corporate responsibilities. As he considered the choice before him, Harrison felt a now familiar warmth spreading through his legs. Looking down, he saw his right knee twitch visibly, the largest movement yet. The boardroom of Reed Enterprises occupied the entire top floor of their downtown headquarters, with views spanning the bay and the iconic Golden Gate Bridge. It had been designed to impress and intimidate, polished marble, mahogany furnishings, and subtle lighting that highlighted the power centered at the head of the table where Harrison had presided for decades. Today, however, Harrison chose to position his wheelchair not at the head, but along the side of the table, a strategic decision that forced board members to turn away from Eleanor Thompson if they wanted to address him directly. "Let's address the elephant in the room," Eleanor began after preliminary matters concluded. Tall and impeccably dressed, with silver hair cut in a severe bob, she had been Harrison's ally for 15 years. Now her blue eyes were cold with disapproval. "Harrison, your recent behavior has raised serious concerns about your judgment and fitness to lead this company." Several board members shifted uncomfortably, but no one interrupted. In the past month, Eleanor continued, you've halted 3 profitable development projects, diverted significant resources to a vaguely defined community initiative, and announced your intention to liquidate personal holdings that are integral to maintaining controlling interest in Reed Enterprises. These actions have already impacted our stock price and alarmed key investors. Harrison waited until she finished, aware that his response would determine the outcome of this meeting. In the past, he would have countered with ruthless efficiency, leveraging personal relationships and veiled threats to maintain control. Now he found himself considering a different approach. Everything Eleanor has said is factually correct, he acknowledged, surprising the room with his candor. My priorities have changed. Reed Enterprises was built on a philosophy that maximized profit above all other considerations. I no longer believe that's the right approach. William Chen, the company's chief counsel, leaned forward. Harrison, if this is about your accident and recovery, it's about recognizing the human cost of our business model, Harrison interrupted. The Mission District development displaced an entire community for the sake of luxury condominiums. We've replicated that pattern across the city, across the state. I've come to believe we have a responsibility to address the damage we've caused. Eleanor's expression hardened. This is precisely our concern. You're making decisions based on emotional reactions rather than sound business principles. Perhaps sound business principles should include more emotional consideration, Harrison countered, but that's a philosophical discussion for another time. Today I'm offering a compromise. He outlined his proposal. He would step down as CEO but remain as chairman of the board with reduced operational involvement. Reed Enterprises would continue its existing business model under new leadership, while Harrison would pursue the Esperanza project independently, using his personal resources. The board's relief was palpable. They had expected a fight, not a voluntary step back. After a brief discussion, they accepted his terms with minimal modification. Eleanor would assume the role of CEO, effective immediately. Harrison would retain influence through his board position, but no longer direct day-to-day operations. As the meeting concluded, Eleanor approached him privately. I don't understand what's happened to you, she said, her voice low. The Harrison Reed I've known for 15 years would never surrender control like this. Harrison looked up at her from his wheelchair. Perhaps he needed to lose control of some things to gain control of others. The following day, Harrison called Maria Garcia to request a meeting with the community committee. They gathered in the same church basement, but this time the atmosphere was different, still cautious but tinged with curiosity rather than outright hostility. I've located a potential site for the new Esperanza Center, Harrison announced, spreading architectural renderings across the table. It's in Potrero Hill, not the Mission, but it's accessible by public transportation and large enough to accommodate both the community center and housing units. Maria studied the plans with a critical eye. The location isn't ideal. Many of our elderly would struggle with the hill. I've thought of that, Harrison replied, indicating transportation solutions incorporated into the design. And I'm still looking at other options, including the possibility of multiple smaller sites throughout the Mission that could be converted. For the next 2 hours, they discussed specifics, the services the center would provide, the criteria for housing eligibility, the timeline for development. The committee members were knowledgeable and passionate, challenging Harrison's assumptions and offering insights he would never have considered on his own. Rafael Ortiz, who had owned a small grocery store in the old neighborhood, raised a critical point. These plans address physical space, but a community is people. Many families who were displaced can't afford to return to San Francisco, even with subsidized housing. They've established lives elsewhere, found new jobs, enrolled children in different schools. Harrison nodded. You're right. That's why I need your help to locate everyone affected. I want to offer not just housing, but comprehensive support, job placement, educational assistance, whatever is needed to make returning viable for those who want to. By the end of the meeting, tentative progress had been made. The committee agreed to help locate displaced families and develop outreach strategies. Harrison committed to refining the development plans based on their input and to creating a legal structure that would place ownership of the completed project in community hands, not his own. As Harrison navigated his wheelchair toward his car, Maria fell into step beside him. You still haven't explained why you're doing this, she said bluntly. People don't change this dramatically without reason. Harrison considered how much to reveal. I met someone who helped me see things differently, he said finally. A child with unusual wisdom. Maria's expression shifted subtly. Sophia Reyes. Harrison's surprise must have shown on his face because Maria gave a knowing nod. There are stories about that girl, she said quietly. Nothing that makes sense in the modern world, but our community has old beliefs. Some say she has gifts. Do you believe those stories? Harrison asked. Maria studied him for a long moment. I believe there are mysteries in this world that defy explanation. And I believe that genuine change, the kind that transforms a person from the inside out, is the rarest miracle of all. She left him with those words, returning to the community center while Harrison sat in his car, reflecting on the unexpected ways his life had changed in the span of a few weeks. He had surrendered control of his company, committed himself to a project that might well bankrupt him, and found himself seeking approval from people he would once have dismissed as irrelevant to his ambitions. And yet, alongside these professional upheavals, his physical condition continued to improve. That morning, he had managed to stand briefly during physical therapy, supporting his weight between parallel bars for nearly 30 seconds before his legs gave out. Dr. Winters had called it medically remarkable and was documenting his case for submission to neurology journals. Harrison had not visited Sophia since beginning the Esperanza project, partly from a superstitious fear that questioning the process might somehow halt his progress, and partly because he wasn't sure what to say to the child who had turned his worldview upside down. But as the challenges mounted, he found himself driving once more to the modest house with its flourishing garden. This time, Sophia was waiting on the porch swing, as if she had anticipated his arrival. "The board tried to remove you," she said as he approached. "Not a question, but a statement of fact." "News travels fast," Harrison replied, maneuvering his wheelchair to face her. "Not news, I just knew." Sophia smiled slightly. "Your legs are stronger." "Yes." Harrison leaned forward. "But I'm facing obstacles I didn't anticipate. The Potrero Hill site fell through, zoning issues that would take years to resolve. The community is still deeply suspicious of my intentions, and locating all the displaced families is proving nearly impossible." Sophia listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. "Did you expect it to be easy?" she asked when he finished. Harrison sighed. "No, but I expected it to be straightforward, difficult but clear. Instead, it feels like for every problem I solve, 3 more appear." "Healing is never linear," Sophia said simply. "Not for communities, not for bodies, not for souls." Harrison felt a flicker of irritation at what seemed like another philosophical platitude. "I need practical solutions, not metaphors." "The solutions will come from unexpected places," Sophia replied, unperturbed by his frustration. "But first, there's something important you haven't done yet." "What's that?" "You haven't visited the Garcia bakery site." Harrison stiffened. Reed Plaza now stood where the bakery had been, its glass and steel facade the physical embodiment of everything he was trying to atone for. What would that accomplish? "Some journeys have to begin at their true starting point," Sophia said. "Go to where it all began. Take me with you." The following afternoon, Harrison's car pulled up before the gleaming entrance of Reed Plaza. The development occupied an entire city block, with high-end retail on the ground floor, luxury condominiums above, and a rooftop garden reserved for residents. It had won architectural awards and been featured in design magazines as an example of urban renewal. Sophia sat beside him in the passenger seat, gazing up at the building with an unreadable expression. It was the first time Harrison had seen her away from her home and garden. "This is where the bakery stood?" she asked. Harrison nodded. The corner space there, now occupied by an artisanal coffee shop. The community center was on the opposite corner. "Let's go inside," Sophia suggested. Harrison hesitated. "I haven't been here since before my accident. People will recognize me." "Yes," Sophia agreed. "That's part of why we need to go." The coffee shop was busy with afternoon customers, young professionals tapping on laptops, tourists consulting city guides, residents picking up orders to go. Conversation paused briefly as Harrison entered in his wheelchair, with Sophia beside him, then resumed with a subtle undercurrent of curiosity. The manager recognized him immediately, hurrying over with a nervous smile. "Mr. Reed, what an honor. Would you like our best table? Perhaps a complimentary—" "Just a table for 2, thank you," Harrison interrupted, uncomfortable with the deference. Once seated near the window, Harrison looked around at the space that had once been the heart of a different community. Exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, minimalist lighting fixtures. Nothing remained of the bakery that had stood here for generations. "Tell me what was here before," Sophia prompted, her hands folded on the table between them. Harrison realized with a jolt of shame that he couldn't describe the bakery in detail. He had never seen it in operation. "I know it was called Garcia's," he said. "It was a family business passed down through generations. People say it was more than just a bakery. It was where the community gathered." "But you never saw it yourself," Sophia observed. "No," Harrison admitted. "I saw it only as a property on a map, an obstacle to be removed." Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's why we're here. You need to see what was lost through eyes other than your own." Before Harrison could question her meaning, Maria Garcia entered the coffee shop. Harrison felt a surge of anxiety. Had Sophia somehow arranged this encounter? But Maria appeared equally surprised to see them, her steps faltering briefly before she approached their table. "Ms. Garcia," Harrison greeted her, aware of the curious glances from other patrons. An unexpected coincidence. "Not entirely," Maria replied, her gaze shifting to Sophia. "I still come here sometimes. Old habits." She hesitated, then gestured to the space around them. "My grandmother started the bakery in 1947. My father expanded it in the 70s. I took over in 2000 and ran it until I destroyed it," Harrison finished quietly. Maria's expression remained neutral. "Until it was demolished, yes." An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Then, to Harrison's surprise, Sophia pulled out a chair for Maria. "Will you join us? Mr. Reed wants to understand what was lost." Maria hesitated, then sat down. For the next hour, she shared stories of the bakery, how her grandmother had arrived from Mexico with nothing but family recipes and determination, how the business had survived economic downturns, earthquakes, and changing demographics, how it had served as an unofficial community center where neighbors gathered for coffee and conversation, where new immigrants found support and information, where children did homework after school while parents worked. Harrison listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his life. The abstract concept of displacement took on human dimensions as Maria spoke of regular customers she still missed, of community rituals centered around holiday breads and celebration cakes, of the day she received the eviction notice and realized a century of family history would end under his company's bulldozers. "The hardest part wasn't losing the business," Maria concluded, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "It was watching our community scatter. Some people had lived in that neighborhood for 50 years. They knew each other's children, watched out for each other's elderly parents. You can't rebuild that kind of connection overnight, no matter how nice the new buildings might be." When she finished speaking, Harrison found himself without words. The magnitude of what had been lost, not just buildings, but relationships, histories, the invisible threads that bound people to place and to each other, settled over him with crushing weight. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words entirely inadequate but deeply meant. "I didn't understand." Maria studied him for a long moment. "No," she agreed, "you didn't. But perhaps now you're beginning to." As they left the coffee shop, Harrison felt a sudden shooting pain down his legs, not the gradual warming sensation that had accompanied his previous improvements, but something sharper and more urgent. He gasped, clutching the arms of his wheelchair. "What's happening?" he asked Sophia as Maria walked ahead to her car. "Your body is remembering," Sophia replied cryptically. "Pain is part of healing too." That evening, Harrison experienced the most significant improvement yet in his condition. During his regular physical therapy session, he not only stood between the parallel bars, but took 2 halting steps before his strength gave out. His therapist was astonished, immediately calling Dr. Winters to witness the development. "This defies everything we know about complete spinal cord injuries," Dr. Winters said, conducting a thorough examination afterward. "The nerve pathways should be permanently severed, yet somehow it's as if they're regenerating." "Is there a medical explanation?" Harrison asked, already knowing the answer. Dr. Winters shook her head. "Nothing in established neurology accounts for this. I'd like to bring in specialists, run more comprehensive tests. This could represent a breakthrough in our understanding of spinal recovery." Harrison agreed to the tests, but said nothing about Sophia or their agreement. Some truths were too strange to share, even with those he trusted. Later that night, alone in his home office, Harrison received an unexpected call from Eleanor Thompson. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "No," Harrison replied, instantly alert to the tension in her voice. "What's happened?" "Someone leaked details of your Esperanza project to the media. It's being framed as an admission of wrongdoing by Reed Enterprises, an acknowledgement that our business practices have been predatory and harmful to communities." Harrison closed his eyes briefly. "That's not inaccurate." "Damn it, Harrison. The stock is already responding. We've lost 8 points in after-hours trading. Major investors are calling for explanations. The board is furious." "The board approved my step back to pursue personal projects," Harrison reminded her. "They didn't approve you publicly undermining the company's reputation and business model." Eleanor's voice rose uncharacteristically. "This leak portrays Reed Enterprises as villains who destroyed a community. The legal implications alone." "Who leaked it?" Harrison interrupted. Eleanor's tone turned icy. "That's what I'm calling to ask you. These details could only have come from someone with intimate knowledge of your plans." The accusation hung in the air between them. Harrison considered the possibilities. Someone from the community committee, perhaps, or one of the consultants he'd engaged for the project. But the timing was suspicious, just as he was making genuine progress, both with his physical recovery and with gaining the community's trust. "It wasn't me," he said finally, "and I'll find out who it was. In the meantime, issue a statement acknowledging my personal involvement in the Esperanza project, but emphasizing that it's separate from Reed Enterprises' ongoing operations." After ending the call, Harrison sat in the darkness of his office, contemplating this new obstacle. The leak would complicate everything, generating media scrutiny, potentially frightening away partners, and certainly intensifying the board's opposition to his involvement. Experimentally, he tried to move his right leg. It responded with a weak but definite lift from the wheelchair footrest. Progress continued, despite the challenges multiplying around him. Harrison reached for his phone and dialed Maria Garcia's number. "We have a problem," he said when she answered, "and I need your help." The media storm that followed the leak was exactly as intense as Harrison had feared. Local news outlets ran features on the fall of a real estate titan, complete with before and after images of the Mission District. National business publications speculated about Harrison's mental state, questioning whether his accident had triggered some kind of psychological break. Social media erupted with both support for his apparent change of heart and skepticism about his true motives. Through it all, Harrison maintained his focus on the Esperanza project. The negative publicity had one unexpected benefit. It drew attention to the plight of displaced communities throughout San Francisco, bringing forward volunteers and potential partners who shared his newfound commitment to restorative development. Maria Garcia proved to be an invaluable ally in weathering the media scrutiny. Her willingness to speak publicly about Harrison's efforts lent credibility that his own statements could never achieve. "I've known Harrison Reed as an adversary," she told a local news program. "I never expected to know him as a partner. But people can change, and when they do, we should make space for that change to matter." 3 weeks after the leak, Harrison had finally secured a suitable property for the new Esperanza Center. Not a single large site as originally planned, but 3 smaller locations throughout the city that would collectively provide all the services of the original community center, plus affordable housing units. The dispersed approach addressed Raphael's concern about families who had relocated to different neighborhoods and couldn't easily return to a single location. The day the first property purchase was finalized, Harrison experienced another significant milestone in his recovery. During physical therapy, he managed to walk the length of the parallel bars unassisted, 6 full steps before his strength gave out. His therapists were ecstatic, documenting every aspect of his progress for the case study Dr. Winters was preparing. That evening, Harrison visited Sophia for the first time in nearly a month. He found her in the garden as usual, but something about her appearance troubled him immediately. Her face seemed thinner, her skin paler, her movements less fluid than before. "You're not well," he observed, maneuvering his wheelchair through the garden path. Sophia looked up from the plant she was tending, her smile tired but genuine. "I'm just a little tired." "How are your legs today?" "Better every day," Harrison replied, studying her with concern. "I walked 6 steps this morning." "That's wonderful," Sophia said, and though her enthusiasm seemed sincere, Harrison noticed how she braced herself against a raised planter to stand. "What's happening to you?" he asked directly. "And don't tell me it's nothing." "I built a career on reading people," Sophia sighed, lowering herself to sit on the garden bench. "Every healing has a cost," she said simply. A cold weight settled in Harrison's stomach. "Are you saying that my recovery is causing your illness?" "Energy doesn't appear from nowhere," Sophia explained. "It transfers, like when you move water from one container to another." "Stop it then," Harrison said immediately. "Whatever you're doing, stop." Sophia shook her head. "It doesn't work that way. We made an agreement. You're keeping your part by rebuilding Esperanza. I'm keeping mine by helping you heal." "I never agreed to harm a child in exchange for my recovery," Harrison protested, his voice rising. "You're not harming me," Sophia insisted. "This was my choice, and it's temporary. Once the healing is complete, the balance will restore itself." Harrison wasn't convinced, but before he could argue further, Elena Reyes appeared at the garden door, her expression wary as she observed their conversation. "Sophia needs to rest now," she said firmly. "She hasn't been sleeping well." Harrison reluctantly prepared to leave, but not before making a quiet request of Elena. "May I speak with you privately?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "Come back tomorrow morning. Sophia will be at school." The following day, Harrison arrived at the Reyes home earlier than usual. Eleanor was waiting for him, her expression guarded as she led him to the small kitchen rather than the garden. "Sophia told me what's happening," Harrison began once they were seated, "that her ability to heal is physically draining her." Eleanor's hands tightened around her coffee mug. "She told you that much?" "Not enough," Harrison replied. "I need to understand what's really going on. How is this possible? And why is she willing to risk her health for someone she barely knows?" Elena was silent for a long moment, seemingly weighing how much to reveal. "My daughter has always been different," she finally said. "Even as a baby, she seemed to understand things beyond her years. When she was 4, she touched our neighbor's arthritic hands, and the pain disappeared for days. By 6, she could ease migraines with a touch. But it wasn't until she was 8 that we realized the full extent of her abilities and their cost." "What happened when she was 8? Harrison prompted, when Elena paused. "My mother was dying of cancer," Elena said softly. "The doctors had given her weeks to live. Sophia went to her hospital room and placed her hands on my mother's chest. 3 days later, the tumors had shrunk by half. 2 weeks later, they were gone completely. And Sophia collapsed the day my mother's tests came back clear. She was hospitalized for exhaustion, anemia, inexplicable organ stress." Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. "The doctors couldn't find a cause, but I knew. She had taken my mother's illness into herself, somehow filtered it, dispersed it." Harrison sat in stunned silence, trying to process what he was hearing. It defied rational explanation, and yet he had experienced the reality of Sophia's abilities firsthand. "Why would she agree to help me?" he asked finally. "After what my company did to your community?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "Sophia believes everyone deserves a chance to heal, not just physically but spiritually. She saw something in you that could be redeemed. At the cost of her own health? She's just a child." "My daughter has never been just anything," Elena replied. "I've tried to protect her, to limit how she uses her gift, but she has her own mind, her own sense of purpose." Harrison leaned forward intently. "There must be a way to stop this, to continue my recovery without harming her." "There isn't," Elena said with quiet certainty. "Once she begins a healing, it continues until complete, or until—" She didn't finish the sentence. "Until what?" Harrison pressed. Elena met his gaze directly. "Until the connection is broken by distance or death." The stark word hung in the air between them. Harrison felt sick at the implication. "Has she ever—" He couldn't complete the question. "No," Elena answered quickly. "But she's never attempted to heal something as severe as your injury before. It's demanding more of her than I've ever seen." Harrison's mind raced, searching for solutions. "What if I stopped the Esperanza project? Would that halt the healing process?" Elena shook her head. "The agreement is already in motion. Stopping now would only leave both processes incomplete." Before Harrison could respond, his phone rang. Olivia, with an urgent tone that compelled him to answer. "I've found something disturbing," she said without preamble. "In researching the families displaced by Reed Plaza, I discovered a connection I think you need to know about." "What kind of connection?" "There was a family named Vega, Gabriel and Lucia, with 2 children. After the eviction, They couldn't find affordable housing in the city. They moved to Oakland into a substandard apartment complex. 6 months later, there was a fire. Lucia and their daughter died. Gabriel took his own life shortly after. Their son disappeared into the foster system. Harrison felt a chill at the recitation of events that so closely paralleled what Sophia had once cryptically referenced. "Why are you telling me this specifically? There were dozens of families displaced." "Because I found birth records," Olivia continued. "The Vegas daughter was born on the same day as you, Harrison, April 17th, 1972. The parallel was too precise to be coincidence." "Where are you getting this information?" "Public records, mostly," Olivia replied. "But I also found something else, a photograph from the community protest against the development. It shows Gabriel Vega confronting you directly. You probably don't remember. There were so many protests. But in the background of the photo, barely visible, there's a young woman who looks remarkably like Elena Reyes." Harrison's grip tightened on the phone as he looked across the table at Elena, whose expression had shifted from concern to something more complex. "I'll call you back," he told Olivia, ending the call without waiting for her response. "You knew the Vegas," Harrison said to Elena. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded slowly. "Lucia was my cousin. When they lost their home because of your development, they stayed with us briefly before moving to Oakland. After the fire," her voice faltered. "After what happened, we tried to find their son Miguel, but the system had already placed him with a family outside the state." Harrison struggled to process this new information. "And Sophia, how does she know about them?" "She would have been too young to remember." "Sophia knows many things she shouldn't," Elena said simply. "Things I've never told her. Things no one could have told her. Is that why she chose to help me? Some kind of cosmic justice for what happened to your family?" Elena shook her head. "Sophia doesn't think in terms of justice or revenge. She sees patterns, connections. If she chose to help you, it's because she saw a path to healing that goes beyond just your physical condition or our community's loss." Harrison sat back in his wheelchair, overwhelmed by the implications. The company he had built, the developments he had pushed through against community resistance, had not just displaced people. They had set in motion chains of events that destroyed lives. And somehow, through means he couldn't comprehend, Sophia had known this specific connection existed between them. "I need to see her," he said, rising shakily to his feet, a movement that would have been impossible weeks earlier. "She'll be home from school in a few hours," Elena replied, her eyes widening slightly at his ability to stand. "Not just to talk," Harrison clarified. "I need to understand what's happening, why she chose me, what she hopes to accomplish, and most importantly, how to ensure she doesn't sacrifice herself in the process." Elena studied him for a long moment. "You've changed," she observed. "The Harrison Reed who evicted our community would never have cared about the well-being of a single child. That Harrison Reed died in the helicopter crash," he replied quietly. "I'm still figuring out who survived." When Sophia returned from school, she found Harrison waiting in the garden. Her face lit up at the sight of him standing, leaning heavily on a cane but upright nonetheless. "You're walking," she exclaimed, dropping her backpack to hurry toward him. "Don't be too impressed," Harrison cautioned. "I can only manage a few steps before my legs give out. But yes, I'm walking." Sophia beamed, but the smile didn't disguise the shadows beneath her eyes or the careful way she moved as if conserving energy. "Sophia," Harrison said gently, lowering himself to a garden bench so they could be at eye level, "I know about the Vegas. I know about the connection between our families." The girl's expression didn't register surprise, merely a quiet acknowledgement. "You needed to know," she said simply. "Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Would you have believed me?" Sophia countered. "Would you have understood what it meant?" Harrison considered this. "Probably not," he admitted. "I would have seen it as manipulation or a strange coincidence." "Exactly," Sophia nodded. "You needed to discover it yourself at the right moment, just like you needed to see the bakery through Maria's eyes, not just your own." "Your mother says you're getting worse," Harrison said, changing direction. "That healing me is taking a physical toll on you." Sophia shrugged slightly. "All choices have consequences." "Not all choices should be available to 10-year-olds, Harrison countered. "I can't allow you to continue if it's harming you." "It's not your decision to allow or disallow," Sophia replied with surprising firmness. "This gift is mine to use as I choose." Harrison recognized the futility of arguing with her direct logic. Instead, he tried another approach, Then help me understand what's really happening. Not just the physical healing, but everything else. Why me? Why now? What's the true purpose behind all of this? Sophia was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Do you believe in balance, Mr. Reed? In what sense? In every sense, she replied. The world tries to maintain equilibrium. When something is taken, something must be given back. When harm is done, healing must follow. You make it sound like some kind of cosmic accounting system, Harrison said skeptically. Sophia smiled faintly. Maybe it is, or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe we're all connected in ways we don't fully understand, and those connections don't break just because we ignore them. She reached out and took his hand, her small fingers warm against his palm. The Vegas were connected to you long before you knew their names. Their daughter shared your birthday, a girl who might have lived a full life if different choices had been made. When you build the new Esperanza, you won't just be replacing buildings, you'll be restoring balance. And your role in all this, Harrison pressed. Why is your health tied to my recovery? Because some healing can only happen through sacrifice, Sophia said simply. Not as punishment, but as transformation. The energy has to come from somewhere. Before Harrison could respond, Sophia suddenly paled, her hand tightening around his as she swayed where she sat. Sophia? Harrison reached out to steady her, alarmed by the rapid change in her condition. I'm okay, she whispered, though clearly she wasn't. Just tired. But there's something important you need to do, something we haven't discussed yet. What is it? There's an abandoned house on the edge of the old neighborhood, Sophia said, her voice growing fainter. It wasn't part of the official development zone, so your company didn't acquire it. No one has lived there for years. You need to go there. Why? What's in the house? Sophia's eyes met his, intense despite her obvious fatigue. Answers. About the Vegas. About why all of this is happening. But you need to go soon. I'll go right now, Harrison promised. But first, let me help you inside. You need to rest. He helped Sophia to her feet, alarmed at how heavily she leaned against him, despite his own unsteady gait. Together they made their way slowly toward the house, where Elena was waiting with a look of concern that deepened when she saw her daughter's condition. What happened? She demanded, rushing forward to take Sophia from Harrison's support. Just tired, Mama, Sophia murmured. I need to lie down for a little while. As Elena helped Sophia inside, she cast a worried glance back at Harrison. This is getting worse, she said quietly. Whatever is happening between you two, it's accelerating. Harrison nodded grimly. I know, I'm going to find answers. Today. The address Sophia had given him led to a dilapidated Victorian on the outskirts of what had once been the heart of the Mission District. Unlike the surrounding area, which had been transformed by gentrification, this particular property appeared frozen in time, paint peeling, windows boarded, a chain-link fence surrounding the overgrown yard. Harrison parked his car at the curb and studied the building, trying to understand its significance. Using his cane for support, he made his way carefully to the fence gate, which hung partially open on rusted hinges. The front door of the house was secured with a padlock, but a side window had been pried open, possibly by squatters or curious neighborhood children. With difficulty, Harrison managed to hoist himself through the opening, his newly strengthened legs still unsteady but functional. Inside, the house was a time capsule. Dust-covered furniture remained positioned, as if the occupants had simply stepped out momentarily. Framed photographs lined the walls and cluttered side tables, images of a family Harrison didn't recognize, but who must have been the Vegas. In what had once been a living room, Harrison found a shrine of sorts. Candles, dried flowers, and more photographs arranged around a central image of a young woman and a small girl. With a jolt of recognition, Harrison realized he was looking at Lucia Vega and her daughter, the child born on his birthday. As he moved through the house, Harrison pieced together the story. This had been the Vega family home for generations. Letters, documents, and photographs revealed a family deeply rooted in the community, with connections to the original founding of the Mission District's Latino Cultural Center. In what must have been an office, Harrison found newspaper clippings about the Reed Plaza development, protest flyers, and legal documents, evidence of Gabriel Vega's fight against the encroaching gentrification. Among them was a letter from Reed Enterprises denying a community proposal to preserve part of the neighborhood as a cultural heritage site. The letter bore Harrison's signature. With growing unease, Harrison continued his exploration. finally climbing the narrow stairs to the second floor. In a small bedroom decorated with faded ballet posters and stuffed animals, he found a journal on the bedside table. Opening it revealed the careful handwriting of a young girl, the Vega daughter, Maria Elena Vega, named after both grandmothers. The final entry was dated just days before the family's eviction from their other home in the development zone. Papa says we have to leave our apartment next week. He's still fighting, but the rich man doesn't care about us. Mama says we'll stay with Tia Elena until we find a new place. I'm scared, but Papa says as long as we're together, we'll be okay. At least we still have Abuela's house, even if it needs too many repairs to live in right now. Harrison closed the journal, a weight of responsibility settling over him, unlike anything he had experienced before. The abstract concept of displacement had transformed into specific human tragedies, a family separated from their community, forced into unsafe housing, ultimately broken beyond repair. And somehow, through Sophia, he was being offered a chance at redemption, not just for his physical paralysis, but for the damage his single-minded pursuit of profit had inflicted on countless lives. As he prepared to leave, Harrison noticed something he had overlooked, a small photograph tucked into the frame of a larger family portrait. It showed Gabriel Vega standing proudly beside a young boy of perhaps 5 or 6. Written on the back in faded ink were the words, "Miguel's first day of school, 2015. Miguel Vega, the son who had disappeared into the foster system after losing his family. The only surviving member of the family Harrison's actions had helped destroy. With trembling hands, Harrison pocketed the photograph. He now understood at least part of what Sophia had been guiding him toward, not just rebuilding a community center or providing housing, but finding the scattered pieces of broken families and offering what healing was possible, even years later. As he carefully made his way back through the window and to his car, Harrison felt his phone vibrate with an incoming call. It was Elena Reyes, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "You need to come back immediately," she said without preamble. "Sophia has collapsed. The doctors can't explain it, but her vitals are dropping. She's asking for you." Harrison broke every traffic law in his desperate race to the hospital. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who had spent 2 years unable to move his legs now drove recklessly across San Francisco, his newly recovered limbs responding to the urgent commands of fear. San Francisco General's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit was a maze of hushed corridors and monitoring equipment. Elena met him at the nurse's station, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "They can't figure out what's wrong," she said without preamble. "Her organs are showing signs of stress, but there's no infection, no injury, nothing they can identify as a cause." Harrison followed her to Sophia's room, where the small figure in the hospital bed seemed diminished, her usual vibrant presence muted beneath an array of monitors and IV lines. A doctor was reviewing her chart, his expression perplexed. "Mr. Reed," Elena said to the physician, "is the family friend I mentioned." The doctor, his badge identified him as Dr. Carter, looked up with the wary expression of a man confronting something beyond his medical training. "Ms. Reyes tells me you might have insight into Sophia's condition." Harrison hesitated, aware of how insane the truth would sound. "We have a connection," he said carefully. "I've been experiencing an unusual recovery from a spinal cord injury. Sophia has been involved in that process." Dr. Carter's skepticism was evident, but he was professional enough to remain focused on his patient. "Whatever the connection might be, Sophia's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Her systems are shutting down, as if she's experiencing massive physical trauma, yet we can find no actual injury." "Can I speak with her alone?" Harrison asked. "Just for a few minutes?" The doctor glanced at Elena, who nodded her permission. "5 minutes," he conceded. "She needs to rest." When they were alone, Harrison moved to Sophia's bedside and gently took her hand. Her eyes fluttered open at his touch, recognition bringing a faint smile to her pale lips. "You found the house," she whispered. "Yes," Harrison confirmed. "I understand more now. About the Vegas, about what happened to them because of me." Sophia nodded weakly. "Miguel is still out there." "I'll find him," Harrison promised. "But right now I'm more concerned about you. This has to stop, Sophia. Whatever you're doing to heal me, it's hurting you too much." "It's almost complete," Sophia murmured. "Your healing, the community rebuilding, they're 2 parts of the same process. One can't continue without the other." "Then I'll stop walking," Harrison said desperately. "I'll accept my paralysis if it means you'll recover." Sophia shook her head slightly. It doesn't work that way. The energy is already in motion between us. Breaking the connection now would harm both of us. Then what can we do? Harrison demanded, frustration edging his voice. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. Sophia's grip on his hand tightened fractionally. There's another way, but you have to be certain you're ready for it. Ready for what? To carry the gift yourself, Sophia said, her voice barely audible now. To become the healer instead of just the healed. Harrison stared at her, trying to process what she was suggesting. I don't understand. You will, Sophia assured him, but first I need to rest, and you need to focus on finding Miguel and continuing the Esperanza project. When the first family moves into their new home, come to me again. Before Harrison could protest further, Sophia's eyes drifted closed, her breathing evening out into sleep. The monitors showed her vitals stabilizing, though still weaker than they should be. Dr. Carter returned, checking the readings with evident relief. Whatever you said to her seems to have helped, he observed. Her numbers are improving slightly. Will she recover? Harrison asked, not releasing Sophia's hand. I wish I could give you a definitive answer, the doctor replied honestly. Her condition doesn't follow any pattern I recognize. We'll continue supportive care and monitoring, but he trailed off, the unspoken uncertainty hanging in the air. In the hospital corridor, Eleanor confronted Harrison directly. She's dying, she said, her voice raw but controlled. Whatever connection exists between you, it's draining her life force. The doctors can't see it, but I can. Her mother knows. Harrison felt the truth of her words like a physical blow. She said the process is almost complete, that when the first family moves into the new Esperanza housing, then you need to make that happen immediately, Elena interrupted. Not in months or weeks now. The intensity of her gaze left no room for argument. Harrison nodded, already calculating what would be required to accelerate the timeline. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of frenetic activity. Harrison leveraged every connection, called in every favor, and spent money with reckless abandon to expedite the Esperanza project. He contacted Maria Garcia from the hospital parking lot. I need to get at least one housing unit ready for occupancy immediately, he explained. Who among the displaced families has the most urgent need? Maria didn't waste time questioning his urgency. The Delgado family, she replied without hesitation. Teresa is a single mother with 3 children. They're currently in a shelter after their landlord doubled the rent last month. Find them, Harrison instructed. Tell them they'll have a home within 3 days. The property Harrison had acquired for the first phase of Esperanza housing was a renovated apartment building in Bernal Heights. The units were nearly complete, but still awaiting final inspections and permits. Processes that typically took weeks or months to navigate through San Francisco's bureaucratic labyrinth. Harrison bypassed the system entirely. He called the mayor directly, donated a 7-figure sum to the city's affordable housing initiative, and secured an emergency occupancy permit by the end of the day. Construction crews worked around the clock, incentivized by triple overtime pay. Furniture was delivered and assembled. Utilities were connected on an emergency basis. The entire process that should have taken months was compressed into 72 sleepless hours. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, Harrison maintained regular contact with Eleanor. Sophia's condition had stabilized, but remained precarious. She drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally asking about Harrison's progress, but too weak for extended conversation. On the morning of the 3rd day, Harrison stood in the doorway of a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment, inspecting every detail one final time. The space was modest but welcoming. New appliances in the kitchen, comfortable furniture in the living room, beds made up with fresh linens, even a small selection of groceries stocked in the pantry. Olivia joined him, clipboard in hand. Everything's ready, she confirmed. The Delgado family will be here at noon. Harrison nodded, his expression a complex mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. What about the other matter we discussed? I've located Miguel Vega, Olivia replied, her voice softening. He's 21 now, living in Portland. After his parents died, he was adopted by a family that moved out of state. I've made contact and explained that someone from his birth family's community wants to connect with him. He's cautious but willing to talk. Thank you, Harrison said, genuine gratitude in his tone. Set up a video call as soon as possible. When Teresa Delgado arrived with her 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, ages 6 to 12, the The small gathering of community members erupted in cheers and applause. Maria Garcia presented them with a ceremonial key, while Harrison observed from a distance, leaning on his cane but standing independently. Teresa's overwhelmed joy, as she toured the apartment with her children, brought an unexpected tightness to Harrison's throat. The simple dignity of having a safe, stable home, something he had taken for granted his entire life, was transforming for this family, who had been living in shelter uncertainty. "Mr. Reed," Teresa said when she noticed him watching from the doorway, "they told me you made this happen." Her eyes held a mixture of gratitude and lingering wariness. The community hadn't forgotten who he had been, even as they witnessed who he was becoming. "The community made it happen," Harrison corrected her. "I just provided resources." "Resources matter," Teresa replied simply. "My children have beds of their own tonight." As the celebration continued around them, Harrison felt his phone vibrate. The caller ID showed Elena's number, sending a spike of anxiety through him. "Harrison," Elena's voice was tight with urgency. "Sophia is asking for you. She says it's time." "I'm on my way," he replied, already moving toward the door. To Maria, he whispered, "I need to go. Make sure everyone knows this is just the beginning. All of the promised housing will be completed." The hospital room was dim when Harrison arrived, the afternoon sun blocked by drawn curtains. Eleanor sat beside Sophia's bed, holding her daughter's hand, her expression a mask of controlled fear. "She insisted on waiting for you," Eleanor said quietly as Harrison approached. "The doctors wanted to run more tests, but she refused." Sophia's eyes opened at the sound of their voices. Despite her pallor and evident weakness, her gaze remained clear and focused. "You did it," she said to Harrison. "The first family is home." "Yes," Harrison confirmed, taking her other hand. "Teresa Delgado and her children. And we've located Miguel Vega. He's alive, living in Portland." A smile touched Sophia's lips. "Good. That's very good. Now we can complete what we started." "Sophia," Harrison began, his voice tight with emotion, "whatever happens next, I want you to know that you've changed my life in ways I can never fully express. You've shown me a path to redemption I didn't deserve." "Everyone deserves a chance to heal," Sophia replied. "Even those who caused harm, especially them." She glanced at her mother. "Mama, can you give us a few minutes alone?" Elena hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave her daughter's side. "I'll be right outside," she finally agreed, pressing a kiss to Sophia's forehead, before stepping out of the room. When they were alone, Sophia's expression became more serious. "How much do you understand about what's happening between us?" she asked. Harrison considered his answer carefully. "I understand that you've somehow channeled energy to heal my injury, at great cost to yourself. I understand that this is connected to the harm I caused the Vegas and others in the community, but there's still so much I don't comprehend." Sophia nodded slightly. "The most important thing to understand is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred. What flows between us isn't just physical healing, it's something deeper, a rebalancing." "At too high a price," Harrison insisted. "Your health is part of the equation," Sophia interrupted gently, "but not the end of it. The gift I have, the ability to channel healing energy, it isn't meant to stay with just one person. It needs to be passed on when the time is right." Harrison stared at her, beginning to grasp what she was suggesting. "To me, that's impossible. I'm not like you." "You are now," Sophia said with quiet certainty. "The connection between us has changed you. Not just your body, but something more fundamental. Haven't you felt it? The awareness of others' pain? The sensitivity to imbalances around you?" Harrison couldn't deny it. Over the past weeks, he had experienced moments of inexplicable intuition, knowing exactly what words would comfort Maria during a moment of doubt, sensing the unspoken fears of community members before they expressed them, even anticipating Olivia's questions before she asked them. "That's just increased empathy," he argued, "a natural result of opening myself to others' experiences." "It's more than that," Sophia insisted, "and you know it. The healing energy that has been flowing from me to you, it needs a new vessel. I've done what I was meant to do, now it's your turn." Before Harrison could protest further, Sophia placed her palm against his heart. The contact sent a jolt through his system, not pain but an electric awareness, as if currents were aligning throughout his body. "What are you doing?" he gasped. "Completing the transfer," Sophia replied, her voice suddenly stronger. "Your body is healed now, but your true purpose is just beginning." Under her touch, Harrison felt a surge of sensation unlike anything he had experienced, a rush of energy that seemed to illuminate every cell from within. His vision blurred momentarily, then sharpened with preternatural clarity. He could suddenly sense the life force within Sophia, see how it had been depleted, feel the connections extending from her to himself and beyond. When she withdrew her hand, Harrison felt fundamentally altered, as if a sixth sense had suddenly activated, allowing him to perceive an entirely new dimension of reality. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. Sophia smiled, and for the first time in weeks, color had returned to her cheeks. "I didn't do anything to you. I simply helped you remember something your soul already knew." "I don't understand." "You will," she assured him. "When someone needs healing, truly needs it, you'll know exactly what to do. The knowledge is inside you now." Sophia settled back against her pillows, suddenly looking very much like the 10-year-old child she was, rather than the ancient wisdom that sometimes spoke through her. "I'm very tired now, Mr. Reed, but I'll be better soon." "Sophia, don't worry," she interrupted softly. "This is how it's supposed to be. The balance is restoring itself." True to her word, Sophia's recovery began that very day. By evening, her vital signs had improved so dramatically that Dr. Carter was baffled, ordering additional tests to confirm what the monitors were showing. By the following morning, she was sitting up in bed, asking for real food instead of the IV nutrition she had been receiving. Harrison visited daily, watching her transformation with a mixture of relief and bewilderment. His own physical recovery had completed as well. He now walked without assistance, his gait strengthening with each passing day. Dr. Winters had declared his case medically unprecedented and was preparing a paper for publication, though Harrison had declined to participate in further studies, unwilling to subject the truth to scientific scrutiny. On the 5th day of Sophia's recovery, Harrison arrived at the hospital to find her room empty. Panic seized him, until a nurse explained that Sophia had been discharged that morning, her recovery deemed complete enough for her to continue recuperating at home. When he arrived at the Reyes house, Elena met him at the door with an unexpected message. "She's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" Harrison demanded. "She was just discharged from the hospital. We came home, she packed a small bag, hugged me and said she needed to go away for a while," Elena explained, her expression a complex mixture of worry and resignation. "She left this for you." She handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter written in Sophia's careful handwriting. "Dear Mr. Reed, by the time you read this, I will have left San Francisco. Please don't try to find me. This separation is necessary for both of us now. What happened between us was always meant to be temporary, a bridge between your old life and your new purpose. That purpose is now yours alone to discover and fulfill. The gift has been transferred. The balance is restoring itself. You have everything you need to continue the work we began together. The Esperanza Project is just the first step. There are others who need the kind of healing only you can provide now. One day, when the time is right, our paths may cross again. Until then, remember that every healing touches both the healed and the healer. With faith in your journey, Sophia." Harrison read the letter twice, then looked up at Elena. "Did you know she was planning this?" Elena sighed heavily. "Not specifically, but I've always known Sophia wasn't meant to stay in one place forever. Her gift calls her where she's needed." "She's 10 years old," Harrison protested. "She can't just disappear." "She's not alone," Elena assured him, though she didn't elaborate on who might be accompanying her daughter. "And she's far more capable than her age would suggest." Harrison sank into a chair, trying to process this sudden development. "So that's it? Everything we've been through and she just leaves?" "She gave you everything she promised," Elena reminded him gently. "Your healing is complete. The Esperanza Project is underway, and now—" She gestured toward him, as if seeing something beyond his physical presence. "Now what?" "Now you carry the gift," Elena said simply. "Sophia always said it wasn't meant to stay with her forever. She was just a conduit, a temporary vessel." Harrison wanted to argue, to demand more explanations, but something inside him, the new awareness Sophia had awakened, recognized the truth in Elena's words. He could feel the energy humming within him, a potential waiting to be directed. "What am I supposed to do with it?" he asked finally. "That's for you to discover," Elena replied. "But I suspect you already know." In the weeks that followed, Harrison threw himself into the Esperanza Project with renewed determination. The first phase of housing was completed ahead of schedule, providing homes for 28 families from the original Mission District community. Construction began on the community center, designed with input from residents to include all the services the original Esperanza had provided, plus new programs addressing current needs. Through it all, Harrison found himself changing in ways that went beyond his physical recovery. His perception of others deepened, allowing him to sense emotional and physical pain that went unspoken. Several times he found himself instinctively placing a hand on someone's shoulder or arm during a conversation, only to have them remark later that their chronic headache had mysteriously vanished or their arthritis pain had subsided. Each of these incidents left Harrison feeling temporarily drained but deeply fulfilled, as if he had found a purpose that had been waiting for him all along. 2 months after Sophia's disappearance, Harrison sat in his home office, reviewing the latest plans for Esperanza's second phase. His phone rang, an unknown number with a Portland area code. "Mr. Reed, this is Miguel Vega. We spoke briefly by video last month." Harrison's pulse quickened. Their previous conversation had been brief and cautious, with Miguel understandably wary of this stranger, claiming connections to his birth family. "Miguel? Yes. Thank you for calling. I've been thinking about your offer to visit San Francisco," Miguel continued, "to see what you're building where my family once lived. I think I'm ready for that now." "I'm glad," Harrison replied sincerely. "There's so much I want to show you, so many people from your parents' community who would love to meet you." "There's something else," Miguel added, his voice hesitant. "This might sound strange, but I've been having these dreams. About a girl about 10 years old. She keeps telling me it's time to go home." Harrison felt a chill of recognition. "What does this girl look like?" "Dark hair, serious eyes. Seems older than she looks somehow. In the dreams, she's always in a garden." The description was unmistakable. Somehow, Sophia was continuing her work from a distance, guiding the next pieces of the puzzle into place. "When can you come?" Harrison asked. "I've already bought a ticket," Miguel replied. "I arrive next Tuesday." As Harrison ended the call, he noticed a strange sensation in his right hand, a gentle warmth pulsing beneath the skin. Looking down, he saw nothing unusual, but the feeling persisted, a reminder of the gift he now carried and the responsibility that came with it. For the first time since his accident, Harrison felt truly whole, not just physically healed but spiritually aligned with a purpose greater than himself. Whatever path Sophia had set him on, he was now committed to following it wherever it might lead. 5 years passed, and San Francisco's landscape, both physical and social, had undergone a remarkable transformation. The Esperanza project, once dismissed as the impractical dream of a wealthy man seeking redemption, had become a nationally recognized model for community-centered development. What began as a single housing complex and community center had expanded into a comprehensive network of affordable housing, small business incubators, healthcare facilities, and cultural preservation initiatives throughout the city. The original displaced families who wished to return had homes again, while new generations found opportunities their parents had feared were lost forever. Harrison Reed, now 57, walked through the main plaza of Esperanza Center on a bright spring morning. Children played in the central fountain, elderly residents chatted on shaded benches, and the small businesses lining the square, including a bakery run by Maria Garcia's niece, bustled with activity. Few who encountered Harrison now would recognize the cold, profit-driven developer he had once been. His expensive suits had given way to casual, practical clothing. The imperious demeanor that had once intimidated boardrooms had softened into something more approachable. Even his physical appearance had changed. He kept his now fully gray hair shorter, and laugh lines had replaced the permanent furrow between his brows. "Morning, Mr. Reed," called Teresa Delgado as she hurried past with a stack of books. Now the community center's education coordinator, she had become one of Harrison's most valued collaborators. "Teresa," Harrison greeted her warmly. "How are the college applications coming along?" 28 seniors applying this year," she replied with evident pride, "including my Carlos. He's hoping for UC Berkeley's engineering program." Harrison smiled, remembering the shy 12-year-old who had moved into the first Esperanza apartment 5 years earlier. He'll get in. His robotics project was impressive. As Teresa continued toward the education center, Harrison felt a familiar warmth in his hands, the signal he had come to recognize as his gift activating. Scanning the plaza, his enhanced perception immediately identified the source. An elderly man sitting alone on a bench, his breathing labored, pain evident in the stiff way he held himself. Harrison recognized him as Mr. Alvarez, a longtime community elder who had recently been diagnosed with advanced heart disease. Doctors had offered little hope beyond palliative care. Without hesitation, Harrison crossed to sit beside him. "Good morning, Mr. Alvarez. Mind if I join you?" The older man nodded in greeting. "Not at all. It's a good day to watch the world go by." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Harrison spoke again. "How's the pain today?" Mr. Alvarez looked surprised, then resigned. "Not good. The medication helps, but—" He trailed off with a small shrug. They both knew his prognosis. "May I?" Harrison asked, gesturing toward the man's chest. "Mr." Alvarez had heard the whispered stories about Harrison's unusual abilities. Initially skeptical, he had witnessed enough seemingly miraculous recoveries in the community over the years to set aside his doubts. "Please," he said simply. Harrison placed his hand gently over the man's heart. The connection formed instantly. He could sense the damaged tissue, the irregular electrical impulses, the struggle of a vital organ failing before its time. Drawing on the gift Sophia had awakened in him, Harrison directed healing energy into the specific areas of damage. The process was never dramatic. No glowing light, no sudden transformations. Just a quiet transfer of energy from one living being to another, guided by an intuition that transcended medical knowledge. After several minutes, Harrison withdrew his hand, feeling the familiar fatigue that accompanied each healing. "Rest today," he advised, "and see your doctor tomorrow. Tell him you're feeling better and want another scan." Mr. Alvarez studied him with wonder. "Something feels different already. Lighter." Harrison squeezed his shoulder gently. The body knows how to heal itself. Sometimes it just needs a reminder. As Harrison continued his morning walk through the community he had helped rebuild, his phone rang. The screen showed Miguel Vega's name, a now familiar presence in Harrison's life since his return to San Francisco 5 years earlier. "Miguel," Harrison answered warmly. "Are we still on for lunch?" "Absolutely," Miguel confirmed. "And I'm bringing those property assessments you asked for. I think I've found 3 more potential sites for the next housing phase." Harrison smiled at the enthusiasm in the young man's voice. At 26, Miguel had completed his degree in urban planning and joined the Esperanza project full-time, driven by a passion to prevent other families from experiencing the displacement his own had suffered. Their relationship had evolved from cautious acquaintances to something like family, not replacing what Miguel had lost, but creating something new and meaningful from the ashes of tragedy. Through Miguel, Harrison had learned the full story of the Vega family, their deep roots in the community, and the devastation that followed their displacement. That knowledge had shaped the Esperanza project in profound ways, ensuring that preservation of family connections and cultural heritage became central to all development decisions. It had also deepened Harrison's commitment to using his gift responsibly, recognizing that some wounds required more than physical healing. After ending the call, Harrison continued to the small office he maintained at the edge of the plaza. Unlike the imposing headquarters of Reed Enterprises downtown, now run entirely by Eleanor Thompson, since Harrison's complete withdrawal from operations 3 years earlier, this space was modest and welcoming, with an open-door policy that community members respected but frequently utilized. Olivia was waiting for him, her role having evolved from executive assistant to full partner in the Esperanza project. "You have a visitor," she informed him, a curious note in her voice. She wouldn't give her name, just said you'd want to see her. Harrison followed Olivia's gaze to a young woman seated by the window, her back to the door. Something about her silhouette triggered an immediate, visceral recognition that sent his heart racing. "Thank you, Olivia," he said quietly. "Could we have some privacy?" As Olivia withdrew, the visitor turned. Though 5 years had transformed her from child to adolescent, Sophia Reyes's eyes remained unchanged, deep, knowing, and infinitely wise beyond her 15 years. "Sophia," Harrison breathed, momentarily frozen in disbelief. She smiled, rising to greet him. "Hello, Mr. Reed. Or do people call you Harrison now?" "Both," he managed, still processing her sudden appearance. "You're here, after all this time." "I said our paths would cross again when the time was right," Sophia reminded him, her voice deeper than he remembered but with the same calm certainty. "That time is now." Harrison gestured for her to sit again, taking the chair opposite her. "Your mother, does she know you're here?" We've been in contact throughout, Sophia assured him. She knows I'm back in San Francisco. I'll see her this afternoon. Where have you been all these years? Harrison asked, studying the changes in her. The child he had known had grown taller, her features more defined, but she carried herself with the same centered presence. Many places, Sophia replied. There are others like you and me, people who can channel healing energy. Some born with the gift, others who receive it as you did. I've been learning from them, understanding the larger patterns. Harrison nodded slowly, processing this revelation. I've wondered if there were others. The gift you gave me. I've tried to use it wisely. I know, Sophia said, her expression warm with approval. I've followed your work from afar. The Esperanza project has become more than I could have imagined. Because of you, Harrison acknowledged. Everything changed when you came into my life. Sophia shook her head slightly. I was just the catalyst. The transformation was yours. Your choices, your commitment, your willingness to face the consequences of your past actions. They talked for hours, Harrison sharing the detailed progress of Esperanza and the ways his gift had evolved over the years. He had learned to direct the healing energy with greater precision, to sense not just physical ailments, but emotional and spiritual wounds as well. Each healing still exacted a physical toll on him, temporary fatigue, occasional fever, but he had learned to manage the effects through rest and careful pacing. In turn, Sophia spoke of her journeys, to indigenous communities in Arizona where ancient healing traditions endured, to a remote monastery in Tibet where monks had preserved knowledge of energy transfer for centuries, to a small clinic in New Orleans where a doctor with abilities like their own combined conventional medicine with more mystical practices. But why return now? Harrison finally asked. After all these years, Sophia's expression grew more serious. Because the next phase is beginning. What you've built here in San Francisco is ready to expand. There are other communities in other cities facing the same forces of displacement and erasure. They need what you've created here, not just the physical infrastructure, but the model of healing that addresses the whole community. You want me to take Esperanza national, Harrison surmised. Beyond that, Sophia corrected. And you won't do it alone. There are others with the gift who need guidance, as you once did. You're talking about creating a network of healers, Harrison said slowly, comprehension dawning. Sophia nodded. The gift isn't meant to remain isolated. Throughout history, those with healing abilities have found each other, shared knowledge, amplified their impact. That tradition was nearly lost in our modern world of scientific skepticism and institutional medicine. It's time to revive it, but adapt it for contemporary needs. The scope of what she was proposing was breathtaking, far beyond anything Harrison had considered. Yet even as his rational mind questioned the feasibility, that other part of him, the awareness Sophia had awakened, recognized the rightness of this evolution. How do we begin? He asked simply. Sophia smiled. We already have. 5 years ago, when you accepted the gift and committed to using it for others instead of yourself. Everything since then has been preparation. She reached into her bag and withdrew a journal, its leather cover worn with use. These are the names and locations of others with the gift. Some aware of their abilities, others still discovering them. They're scattered across the country, working in isolation or small groups. They need connection, structure, resources. Harrison took the journal, feeling the weight of responsibility it represented. And my role? You've built a model that works, Sophia said. A way to heal not just individuals but communities. A framework that addresses physical needs alongside spiritual and emotional ones. Now you need to teach others to replicate that model. I'm no teacher, Harrison protested mildly. You've been teaching for 5 years, Sophia countered. Every time you involve community members in decision-making, every time you mentor someone like Miguel, every time you show rather than tell what healing looks like, you're teaching. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Olivia entered with an apologetic expression. Sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent situation at the health center. A child having a severe asthma attack. The ambulance is still 15 minutes out. Harrison rose immediately. I'll come now. To his surprise, Sophia stood as well. I'll join you, she said, her tone making it clear this wasn't merely an offer, but a demonstration of what their partnership would entail moving forward. Together, they hurried to the small health clinic that operated within the Esperanza complex. Inside, a young mother cradled a wheezing child of about 6, panic evident in her eyes as a nurse administered emergency treatment that wasn't providing sufficient relief. Without hesitation, both Harrison and Sophia approached. No words were needed between them. They positioned themselves on either side of the child, Harrison's hands gently touching the boy's back, while Sophia placed her fingers lightly on his chest. The synergy was immediate and profound. Harrison felt his own healing energy amplified, refined, and directed with a precision he had never achieved alone. The child's breathing eased within moments, the desperate wheezing subsiding to normal respiration as the inflammation in his airways receded. The experience left Harrison momentarily lightheaded, but the usual fatigue that followed a healing was significantly reduced, as if Sophia's presence had somehow made the process more efficient, less draining. The mother's gratitude was overwhelming, her tears flowing freely as she embraced them both. "Thank you," she whispered. "The doctors in the emergency room never helped this quickly." After ensuring the child was stable and arranging follow-up care, Harrison and Sophia returned to his office. The demonstration of their combined abilities had shifted something fundamental in their conversation. "That's what you mean, isn't it?" Harrison asked quietly. "The power of healers working together." Sophia nodded. "One healer can change individual lives. Many healers working in concert can transform whole systems. And that's what you've come back to create. What we'll create together," Sophia corrected him. "The foundation is already here, in what you've built with Esperanza. Now we expand, not just the physical infrastructure, but the healing network itself." In the days that followed, Harrison and Sophia began mapping out this new vision. They identified cities with the greatest need for community healing, places where economic development had created similar patterns of displacement and trauma to what San Francisco had experienced. They reviewed Sophia's journal of potential healers, discussing how to approach each one, how to help them develop their gifts. Miguel Vega became an essential part of these conversations, his personal experience and professional training providing valuable insights into how the Esperanza model could be adapted for different communities. His reaction to Sophia was one of immediate recognition, though they had never met. "You're the girl from my dreams," he said when Harrison introduced them. "The one who told me it was time to come home." Sophia smiled. Sometimes connections exist before we're physically present in each other's lives. 1 month after Sophia's return, Harrison hosted a gathering at his home, once an ostentatious mansion, now redesigned as a more modest living space, with the remainder converted into a community training center. The guests included key figures from the Esperanza project, alongside 3 individuals Sophia had identified as natural healers from neighboring cities. As the evening progressed, Harrison found a quiet moment to step onto the terrace alone, taking in the view of the city he had once sought to conquer and now served with humility. The transformation of his life over the past 5 years seemed almost incomprehensible, from a man defined by ambition and acquisition to one measured by how much healing he could facilitate. Sophia joined him, her presence so natural it required no acknowledgement. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights shimmer against the bay. "I never thanked you properly," Harrison said finally, "for saving my life." "Which life?" Sophia asked with gentle humor. "The one where you walk again, or the one where you discovered your true purpose?" "Both," Harrison acknowledged, though the second proved far more valuable than the first. Sophia turned to face him, her expression serious but warm. "What happened between us was always part of something larger. The gift isn't random. It follows patterns, seeks balance, finds those who will use it to heal the deepest wounds." "The Vega family," Harrison said quietly. "The connection wasn't coincidence." "There are no coincidences in healing," Sophia replied. "Only recognition of patterns we usually ignore." Harrison nodded, understanding now what he had only glimpsed before. "And Miguel? His return to San Francisco? His commitment to Esperanza? That's part of the pattern too." "The son returns to heal the community his parents lost," Sophia confirmed, "and in doing so, completes a circle that allows new patterns to emerge." From inside came the sounds of conversation and laughter, the new healers connecting with the Esperanza team, relationships forming that would carry their work forward in ways neither Harrison nor Sophia could fully anticipate. "When I was that cold, ruthless developer," Harrison reflected, "I believed my legacy would be the buildings that bore my name, the wealth I accumulated, the power I wielded. I never imagined that your true legacy would be healing," Sophia finished for him, "that the man who once displaced communities would become their champion, That the buildings that matter most would shelter those you once ignored? Harrison smiled at the elegant summation of his journey. Precisely. The greatest healers often begin as those who caused harm, Sophia said softly. They understand the full cycle, destruction and restoration, wounding and repair. Their transformation carries more power because of where they began. As they returned to join their guests, Harrison felt a familiar warmth spreading through his hands, not the signal of someone needing healing, but something more expansive. It was as if the gift itself was responding to the gathering of like-minded healers, to the potential being created in this convergence of purpose. In that moment, Harrison Reed, once defined by towers of glass and steel bearing his name, understood that his true monument would be invisible to the casual observer. It would exist in the restored communities, in the lives touched by healing, in the network of healers that would continue long after his physical presence ended. And standing beside Sophia, the catalyst who had transformed his understanding of wealth and power and purpose, he felt a profound gratitude for the accident that had broken his body and the child who had shown him how to rebuild not just himself, but the world around him. The man who had once measured his worth by the height of his buildings now measured it by the depth of the healing he could facilitate. And in that transformation, Harrison Reed had discovered a truth that his former self could never have comprehended, that in giving away his power he had found a strength beyond imagining. 10 years later, Harrison stood on the rooftop garden of the newest Esperanza Center, this one in Detroit, where abandoned factories and foreclosed homes were being transformed into vibrant community spaces and affordable housing. At 67, his hair was fully white now, his face lined with age but his eyes bright with purpose. Beside him stood Miguel Vega, now the operational director of the National Esperanza Network, which had expanded to 12 cities across the country. And with them was Sophia, now 25, her childhood wisdom having matured into a profound leadership that guided their growing community of healers. The first families move in tomorrow, Miguel reported, gesturing to the recently completed housing complex below. 42 households that were displaced by the automotive plant closure 3 years ago. Harrison nodded with satisfaction. And the health center? Fully staffed, Sophia confirmed, including 2 new healers we identified last month. They're eager to begin working with the community. Together they surveyed what they had built, not just the physical structures, but the invisible infrastructure of healing that now connected communities across the country. What had begun with one man's paralysis and one child's wisdom had grown into a movement that was quietly transforming American cities. Harrison felt the familiar warmth in his hands, the gift that had changed everything, that had shown him how wealth and power could be redirected toward healing rather than acquisition. He was no longer the richest man in San Francisco by conventional measures, having channeled most of his fortune into the Esperanza Network. But he had discovered a prosperity of purpose that no financial success could have provided. As they descended from the rooftop to prepare for the next day's ceremonies, Harrison reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from a man who once mocked a child's offer of healing to one who had dedicated his life to extending that healing to others. The transformation seemed both miraculous and inevitable, as if he had finally become the person he was always meant to be. And in cities across America, communities rose from the ashes of displacement and neglect, guided by a network of healers who understood that the deepest wounds required more than buildings to repair. They required the restoration of connections, of dignity, of home. This was Harrison Reed's true legacy, not towers bearing his name, but communities rebuilt with healing at their center. And in every life touched, in every family housed, in every community restored, the gift Sophia had awakened in him continued to ripple outward, transforming the broken places of the world, one healing touch at a time.